Pressure pushing down on me, pressing down on you. No man has fall under pressure. Brings it building down, sticks are falling into. But people on streets under pressure, under pressure.
So we're in a series that we're calling Under Pressure. And the idea here is we're going to talk about all the things that are kind of pressing in on us, because I really feel like we live in a world, not just because of recent events that are happening, but it seems in the last decade or so, just more and more pressure. I know more than I've ever had to live under in my life. And so that constant pressure begins to affect us. And last week, we started with talking about the internal pressure. We can call it anxiety, you can call it worry, but there's those things that are in our head, those messages that we replay over and over and over. And what we learned last week was that peace, this thing that we all want, according to Philippians 4, is not just something that happens. Right? It's not automatic. It's something that we cultivate. It's something that we participate in. And as we do those things, then the peace of God comes. And you can go back on our YouTube channel and you can watch that message for sure. Today I want to shift the focus though, because not all pressure shows up internally. Not all pressure is anxiety or worry. Sometimes it shows up as this word right here: adversity. Sometimes it's not just your thoughts that feel heavy, it's your actual circumstance that you're in that is heavy. And generally it's things that you didn't choose. And adversity by its nature is generally things that you can't solve, or there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. You know, you get a health diagnosis and it changes your life, or something financial like a financial setback or a job loss. Maybe it's a strained relationship, tough season at work. These are adversity, and one of the other marks that comes with adversity is it lasts longer than you ever thought. You ever been there? Like, yeah, you know, I got that layoff, and y'all get a job in the next, 4 weeks or 6 weeks. Good luck. I hope so. Adversity is usually marked by something that extends longer than we wanted to, or we anticipate, or we expected to. And when you're in adversity, the questions and things that you ask yourself begin to shift. When you're under anxiety, the questions and things you have is, okay, how do I calm my anxious mind? How do I calm down? How do I calm down? When you're in the midst of adversity, the questions are different. The questions are, how long is this going to go on? How much longer, Lord? Or if you're a follower of Jesus, Jesus, I have been following you faithfully. I've been doing all that you have asked me to do. Why is this still going on? Those are the questions that come inside of adversity. And at this point in my life, I have been through quite a few seasons of adversity. But one of the clearest examples that I think we could all relate at least somewhat to was what happened to us as a church and to me as a pastor this time 6 years ago, March of 2020, when everything shut down. When this room that was filled for 2 services, all of a sudden, in an instant, was empty. And I would stand on this stage and I would preach to our camera bank right in the back to an empty room, where there was no way to feel anyone or see anyone. It was very weird. It was surreal. And on the surface, I was doing everything during that time that needed to be done. But internally, there was a constant weight. And sometimes the weight would get heavier and it just never got lighter that I would carry. And for the first time in my ministry career, and at that point I think I've been doing it almost 30 years, I was checking like giving reports, not like individual reports, but hey, what was giving this week? What was giving for this month? And I found myself kind of refreshing those reports because I was having conversations in the background of how long can we go before there are staff layoffs or severe cutbacks? What happens if attendance doesn't come back? What happens if giving dips again next month? These were the discussions and the questions I was having. And as a pastor, I'm not just thinking about my own household, I'm thinking about all of my staff and their household. And then on top of that, I was thinking about you guys and what was going on. We had two families in here that I was aware of that lost loved ones because of COVID. And so they were walking through that. Many people got laid off. People were spiraling from isolation. And so I'm sitting and I'm thinking not just about long-term sustainability. I'm just feeling a responsibility for all kinds of things, and I couldn't turn that switch off. And then there were just decisions. Like every week, a decision had to be made. I don't know if you guys had to do these things. Like, oh, we got to make a decision about this one, and we got to decide about that one. When do we reopen? Do we wait longer? What are the safety measures? And I knew no matter what decision that we made, there was going to be a segment of people that were going to be upset and believed it was the wrong one. But I didn't know what to do because there was no playbook for this. Like in seminary, that said, hey, here's how you deal with a worldwide pandemic. We never talked about that. I remember just feeling the pressure of knowing every single decision that I make is going to disappoint somebody. It begins to make you second guess yourself. It begins to make you think, well, maybe someone else would have done this job better. But I think what surprised me the most was not the decisions, not all the financial pressure. It was the relational loss. Like there were no more conversations in the aisles or in the lobby or on the sidewalk. I wasn't high-fiving little kids as they went by. There weren't all the random kind of conversations. I missed seeing faces and hearing how things were going. And over time, I realized that people were drifting. And most of the time, not really on purpose. We never would see them again. And they would just disconnect. And for me, that hurt. Like way more than I expected it to. I knew it would hurt, but way more than I expected it to. And so that whole season wasn't marked, for me at least, by panic. It was marked by like this steady, ongoing adversity. God, how long is this going to go on? Like, what is going on? I wasn't falling apart, but I was carrying something heavier than I've ever carried it. And if you've ever done anything like that, you know how that feels. Adversity doesn't just create inconvenience. It creates an interpretation. Like, this is going on. What does that mean about me or for me? Right? We start assigning meaning. It's just our nature to whatever that adversity is, to whatever that pressure is. What does that say about us, about my relationships, about my faith? And I get it. You've probably never led a church through a pandemic. But you have done something and led somewhere and been part of something that was heavy. And it went on longer than you ever thought it would do. And you stayed strong. And on the outside, you looked confident and strong. But on the inside, you were questioning all kinds of things. And it just felt never ending. Adversity has a way of doing that to all of us. Some of you are in a season right now, and it's not really marked by anxiety. So we talked last week about anxiety, but as I'm talking about adversity, you're like, yeah, I'm there. I understand. You're in it, and you're persevering, and you're showing up, and you're doing all the things that you need to be doing, but it is heavier than you ever expected. Maybe for you it is financial. And you never expected to be at the place that you're at, or something happened. Maybe it was a job layoff and you never really expected to be laid off for that long. And you've made all the adjustments and you've cut back. You're trying to be wise. But man, does it still feel tight? It still feels heavy. Maybe it's relational. You know, there's something relationally going on, and you've gone to counseling and you've done all the things that you need to do, but the tension still hasn't resolved, and it feels like the distance is not getting shorter in the relationship, it's getting further and further apart. Or maybe it's something physical. You went to the doctor, and one day everything was great, and then you go and they say, hey, we need to run some tests, and then the test results come back. Okay, well, this is life-changing. What is going on with that? Or maybe there's a new limitation that you had that hasn't been there, or whatever you're trying to recover from is just slower than you ever anticipated. Could just be a season that's stretching you, either in school or at work. Like, I'm being pressed harder and harder to take more classes or to do better on my grades or to do this. And hey, if you want to go to college, and hey, if you want to do this, hey, if you want to be able to have a career, or hey, if you want to advance in your career, if you want to be able to do this, you got to take on this load and do this. And all of it just feels heavier and heavier and heavier. I don't know what's going on with you. But if you're in adversity, whatever it is, what makes it really difficult is not just the hardship itself. It's how you're interpreting the hardship. What you're telling yourself about what is going on. Because when something hard lingers, we just by nature start assigning meaning to it. And so we'll say things like, well, maybe this means I missed something. Where did I mess up? Well, I guess I just deserve this. Maybe God is punishing me. Maybe this means that I made a wrong move. Maybe this is just the consequence of something I did. I just don't even know what I did. Maybe God is disappointed with me, upset with me, angry with me. These are all interpretations of going through a hard thing. And the challenge is, once we assign a meaning to that season or to that adverse thing, we start living out of that meaning, right? You've heard of self-fulfilling prophecies, right? You start seeing everything through that lens. Well, I guess God is disappointed in me. I guess God is angry at me, and you see it everywhere. It's not true, but that's the lens through which you see it. And the way that you interpret adversity will determine how you endure it. You're going to endure it. It's not if, you will go through it. But how you interpret it determines how you endure it. So if you interpret adversity, this thing that's happening, as punishment, you'll endure it as shame. Well, I guess I messed up. I shouldn't have done that. If you interpret it as proof, this is just proof that God is absent, He's distant, He has left, then you will endure it alone. And that's how you will see it. If you interpret it as failure, you'll endure it as doubting yourself. If you interpret it as random and meaningless, you'll endure it resentfully. Why did this happen to me? But what if there's a different interpretation? What if there's a more correct interpretation for what is going on? Because if you can get the correct interpretation and see it the way that God sees it, it will shape you rather than crush you. And so, I think this is where we need to let Scripture kind of reframe what adversity is. So if you got a Bible, we're going to go to the book of James. We'll start right in James 1. If you don't have a Bible, you can open the Bible app. All of our notes are also on the Bible app for this service. You'll find it under live. But in James chapter 1, James is one of the brothers of Jesus. Okay, there's no mention of him ever being a follower of Jesus until his big brother raises from the dead. To which I always like to joke, how many of you are younger siblings? What would it take to convince you that your older sibling was the Son of God? Probably raised from the dead. Right? So after the resurrection, James comes on the scene and he's leading a church. But he is writing to a people who are not going through happy times. Things are not going well for the people that James is writing to because these believers have been scattered because of their faith. They've been persecuted, and so now they have left their homes. They've lost their home. They've lost their stability. They've lost anything that they felt was normal. They've lost income, community, safety. Their faith in Jesus made life harder, not easier. Think about that for a while. They're believers in Jesus, but life got harder. So when James begins his letter, and we're going to start towards the beginning, he's not speaking to people that everything's going well. It's not. It's a big season of adversity. And what he says when he starts off, I get it. We're going to read it, and it is going to sound so unreasonable. Like, James, you've got to be kidding me. James chapter 1, verse 2. Dear brothers and sisters, when trouble of any kind comes your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. So right away, you're like, you got to be kidding me. I'm not going to do that. There's so much packed in here. We'll take it little by little. Dear brothers and sisters, if trouble comes your way, is that what he says? Yeah, it's not really great news, is it? When trouble comes your way, like it's going to come. I mean, Jesus himself says trouble will always be with you. James is like, when it comes, of any kind, he's like, there's all kinds of different kinds of trouble. We just talked about a bunch of them. There's financial trouble, there's relational trouble, there's spiritual trouble, there's big trouble, there's little trouble, there's kids that are trouble, there's the neighbor's kids that are bigger trouble, right? When trouble comes of any kind, and you can bring up any kind, consider it an opportunity for great joy. Now, I won't ask you to raise your hand, but that's probably not how you look at trouble. Well, this is an opportunity for joy, right? That's not how we feel. In the middle of going through adversity, in the middle of trouble, you're not looking for joy, you're looking for a way out, relief. You're looking for this thing to be over. But hear me, James is not saying, look, just pretend it doesn't hurt. That is not what he is saying here. He uses a word, consider. Now, this word in the original Greek, it means to regard or to count or to evaluate. If you put it together, to deliberately decide how to view something. So when he uses this word consider, he's saying, I want you to deliberately decide how to view this as an opportunity for great joy. He's talking about interpretation. I want you to be able to interpret this. It's a lens through which it looks. So when trouble comes, you get a choice in what that trouble means to you. You don't get a choice in whether or not it hurts. That's not your choice. You don't get a choice on whether or not it's going to be hard. That is not your choice. You get a choice in how you frame it. And this is where we get to what I summarize this as a big idea for what James is saying. Whatever pressure or stress that you're in or adversity, it's not pointless. God's always present. God's always working. Whatever pressure you're under, it's not pointless. God is always present, and God is always working. James says trouble can become an opportunity. Not because the trouble is good, but because God does something in you through enduring and making it through that. So for James, the questions, if he were listing questions, isn't how do I get out of this? How do I avoid trouble? James is like, no, you can't avoid trouble. It's going to come. The question's how you frame it. Am I going to see this as punishment? Will I consider it as God is not around, God has abandoned me? Will I interpret this as, well, here I am, I'm such a failure? Or will I consider the possibility that something deeper, something better, something greater is happening? Because that word consider that he puts in the text that we're saying here, it's something you get to participate in. Hey, consider this. Think about this. I want you to frame it up in a way. Consider that something deeper is happening. You're not powerless. You can't control the trouble, but you can control how you interpret it. James is not in this whole passage telling you, you know what, you just need to feel joyful. That's not what he's saying. He's saying you need to frame it in order that what could happen and what will happen can bring great joy. Because how you frame adversity determines whether you fight it, you resent it, or you allow God to use it. So, James goes on, verse 3. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. I love his logic. He starts with the phrase, for you know. In other words, hey, we all know this, right? I'm not telling you anything you don't know, right? Maybe I'm reminding you that something is here. For we all know, even if we have forgotten, we know testing is not the same as punishment. I think we all know that. Now, if you're in school and the teacher does a pop quiz, sometimes that's punishment. I get it, so that's testing. But in life, testing is not punishment. Testing is about proving and then strengthening something. Maybe something is a little weak and it needs to be tested. He says that when your faith is tested, your endurance has, what is the word he uses there? What? It has a what? Oh, then it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to. That's not guaranteed. It has a chance to grow. Why does he use the word chance? Because endurance, this adversity, it provides the atmosphere that you could grow, but how you interpret it and how you live it out will determine whether or not you grow. You have a chance, but you play a little role in this. How you frame it up. Whether or not that growth happens depends on how you walk through it. I love to say it in these terms when I'm going through a tough time. Everything that you go through in life eventually becomes a story that you tell. All of us here, except for the students who are still in it, you went through high school in 4 years, right? It took 4 years to go through high school. That's a story you can tell in about 5 minutes now, isn't it? Story you tell. Your worst moment in your life, you get enough distance, and it's just a story you tell now. Here's the thing. You get to choose when you're in the middle of it what story you tell. You're walking through a difficulty in a relationship. You get to choose when this is over, what story am I going to tell? Because the story you could tell is, you know what? She never gave in. She never said she was wrong. She never did this. There was never an apology, and I just made her pay for it. That's a story you can tell. Or the story you can tell is, you know what? I took this as an opportunity to learn some things about myself, and I chose to seek God in this, and I grew, and our relationship came back together. But more important than that, I got better at being in a relationship. That's a story you can tell. You choose, because everything that's in your life eventually will just be a story that you tell. So, faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. This idea of so let it grow isn't a participation thing. You're going to play a role in this. Right? You get to determine what the meaning is for the thing that you're going through. And you can either cooperate with what God is trying to build in you, or you can fight against it. And if you cooperate, then you let it grow. You let it grow. But if you fight it, continually asking, how do I get out of it? How do I escape this? You'll never grow in what God is trying to form inside of you. So he says, when that endurance is fully developed, you become perfect and complete. That's a little confusing for us in English because the word there, perfect, doesn't mean flawless. When we think perfect, we think there's no flaw that's in it. It just means mature. You could phrase this and have the same meaning. It would be different words, but you could say, it's fully developed. You will be mature in your faith. You will be mature and whole. Maybe that's a better way to say it. So these 3 verses that James gives us is kind of a framework for how we handle adversity. Again, I summarize it this way. It helps me to summarize things because I remember them. Pressure, and you could put adversity, isn't pointless. It doesn't have to be. God's always present. God's always working. Adversity doesn't always feel good. Hardly ever does it feel good. Trials are never easy. But what is also true is God uses those very hard, difficult things to form something in us that is lasting and maturing. So what does it actually mean to let it grow? Let's get real practical here. What can I do if I'm going through a season of adversity to not fight it, but grow in what's going on? First thing I would say is stay faithful in small ways, even when you don't see immediate results. Stay faithful. You keep showing up. God, I'm still here. God, I'm still here. You keep praying. You keep choosing integrity. You keep loving the people that God puts right in front of you, not because it's easy, but because you trust that something is being formed underneath the surface. If you think about growth, most growth, at least in my life, is slow and largely unseen. All right, it doesn't come with like big fanfare. Look at me, look how I'm growing in all. You don't get more followers on Instagram as you grow. It doesn't always look like obvious progress, but you grow. Every time you choose faithfulness, every time that you look at something and you choose to not run away, but to walk through it and endure it with God at your side, it strengthens something in you. Every time you refuse to quit because it's hard, endurance deepens. Staying faithful in small ways. It's how you mature over time. So stay faithful. Second, stop interpreting adversity as rejection. I think this is where the real battle for most of us is. Because adversity is hard. But what makes it even harder is all the assumptions that we put on top of it at what it means. I deserve this. I'm punished. I'm this. God is disappointed in me. God's angry with me. When something difficult lingers, it's easy. It is easy to start believing that God is pulled away. That's the thoughts the enemy will put in your head. God walked away, so he's not with you. Or if it's not that, see, God is disappointed with you. God is punishing you for all those things that you did. And it's easy to start thinking, well, I must have just stepped off the path somewhere. I must have gone in a wrong direction. But hear me on this. Difficulty is not the same thing as rejection. Difficulty is just difficult. It is not being rejected. It's not being punished. Just because something is painful does not mean that God is not present. Just because something is stretching you doesn't mean that you are out of step with God. It just means it's hard. I told my kids when they were growing up, and I'll sit and tell you, you can do hard things. You can do hard things. Sometimes you just need to tell yourself that. I can do hard things. We've got to separate discomfort from disapproval. They're not the same. It's just discomfort. It's hard. And if you don't, every hard season, you will feel like it is all directed at you personally. You'll begin to read rejection into every moment and everything. But you can view it a different way. Go, okay, well, this is refining. This is stretching. This is building. I don't know how you grew up in church. I don't know what messages you've heard in society. But I am here to tell you with 100% truth that these verses that are in here, this whole text, never promises that closeness with God will eliminate adversity. This never says that your life will be easy. It just says that God will be with you in the easy times, in the good times, and in the hard times. You can do hard things. God is with you as you go. Part of letting endurance grow is choosing not to assume the worst about God or yourself while you go through. Third thing, resist the urge to numb the pressure in unhealthy ways. When things and hard things hang around longer than we expected, longer than we want, it is really tempting to escape emotionally, isn't it? I mean, we all have a tendency to do that. So we distract ourselves, and there's lots of different ways that we can distract ourselves. We disengage from people. Some of us, we just start overworking and we pour everything into work. Some of us, we don't work enough and we spend too much time and more time on our phone. So we overscroll. There's a new term for sleeping in now that my daughter has taught me. It's called bed rotting. So like that sounds gross and about accurate from your teenage years. But that is a coping mechanism. We binge watch. We look for anything that will temporarily relieve the pressure. And what happens is relief becomes the goal. And it's really, really dangerous because endurance doesn't grow when we numb ourselves. Like, this is why James doesn't guarantee that you're going to grow. Endurance comes when we stay in it and we go to God and He walks alongside of us. Avoiding, it may make the moment easier, but it makes you shallow. And when harder times come, you need the roots to go deeper so that you can endure the next thing. And then lastly, I want you to ask a different question when you're going through adversity. Because most of us, when adversity hits, the question that we ask, and it's the first question I go to too, why is this happening to me? Right? Isn't that generally the question? Like, why is this happening to me? You may not ask it the first day or week, but man, if you're in something for a long time, God, why is this happening to me? The next question is, how long is this going to go on? I just want you to ask a different question. Because the truth is, when we say, why is this happening? I rarely have ever gotten an explanation. And if you have to live your life with the answer to why, you're going to be really disappointed in life. Because clarity, that level of clarity may not come quickly or ever. And so what James is invited to ask a better question. So, God, why is this happening to me? How long is this going to go on? God, how are you using this? That's a better question. That's just a better question. God, how are you using this in my life? And when you do that, you'll begin to notice that you're being strengthened. You'll notice that your patience is actually being formed. That your relationship with God and your dependence on Him is actually getting deeper. but you've got to reframe the question. You got to ask a better question. And over time, asking a different type of question is what creates deeper roots. So again, when we do these things, James says, we have the opportunity for growth. We're reframing the situation because pressure isn't pointless. You're going to have tough times, trouble, adversity, whatever you want to put in here. It's not pointless. When those things come, God is always present, and God is always working. How we frame it means that it's not wasted. When I look back at 2020 now, I can see things now that I couldn't see in the moment. Because when you're in the moment, you're just surviving. And as I was telling the story to Jody, I said, I probably need to also say, I would never choose to go back to that season again, ever. Like, it's not like you go through adversity, you're like, well, I'd do it again. I wouldn't. Maybe something different. I don't want to do that again. I wouldn't call it easy, but I can 100% say what God formed in me during that time was strength and endurance. There's a steadiness that I have in my life that I just didn't have before. There's a deeper dependence on God. I have a greater compassion for people who are walking through uncertainty. I know what it was like. And none of that was revisible when I was in my office refreshing, the web browser to look at giving reports. But as I can't do anything about this, God. I'm going to just turn it over to you. That was forming something in me that I didn't see at the time, but I can see it now. And I can see that all of the pressure that I was under was not pointless. God absolutely was present with me during that season. And he was absolutely working in me to do something. And the same thing can be true for you. You may not see the growth yet. You may not feel stronger yet. You may still be right in the middle of adversity. You may have another half to go. I don't know. But endurance is forming. Depth is developing. And if you allow it, your faith is being strengthened. And one day, you'll be able to look back like I can look back and go, yeah, I wouldn't do that again. But I can see how these things developed in my life. That's the hope we have in Jesus. Not that the pressure disappears tomorrow, but that the pressure is not wasted today because it's not pointless. God is always present and is always working. So let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we come to you as people. What I love about this church, God, we are just people who are not pretending. Some of us walked into this room carrying a weight. No one else sees it. Some of us have walked into this room in the middle of one of the heaviest seasons that has gone on way longer than we ever expected, and we're asking really hard questions. Like, God, how long is this going to go on? Why is this happening to me? Where are you in the midst of this? I just love, God, that you're not intimidated by any of our questions, including those. You're not offended by our honesty. So right now, for the person who feels worn down, for the person who feels confused and quietly just wonders, hey, did I just do something wrong, God? Would you speak to them? Would you show them that hardship and hard things is not the same as you rejecting them? Would you show them that just because it's hard doesn't mean that you have abandoned them? Lord, we all need to be reminded that just because we can't see you working does not mean that you are not working. So, Father, I pray that you would give us a steadfastness that doesn't depend on immediate relief. God, I pray that every person, you would give them endurance that comes from knowing you are near, that you are the anchor, that you are working towards great things. And then for anyone in the room, Lord, who is enduring all of these things in life and hardships on their own, apart from you, in their own strength, my deepest hope is that Jesus, you would find a way to speak to them in a way that they would be open to you. And if that's you, Jesus wants to be involved in your life. He doesn't stay distant from suffering. Jesus enters into our suffering. He entered into our world to suffer for us. And through his death and resurrection, he makes everything that I said today possible. And so for anyone here who has never trusted you, Jesus, I pray that they would surrender control. And if that's you, like if you just want to pray a simple prayer, Jesus, I'm tired of carrying this alone. I'm tired of trying to interpret everything on my own. Right now, I just want to put my trust and belief that you are going to step into my brokenness. I want to trust you. I want to follow you. And Jesus, for anyone praying that today, give them an awareness that you are there. And for the rest of us, for all of us, whether in the middle of pressure or we're coming out of it or we're going into it, God, I know that the pressure may not lift immediately. The timeline may not change overnight. The answers may not come all at once. But God, let us all know that you are present. You are working. And nothing we walk through with you is wasted. Give us endurance. Give us trust. Give us hope that runs deeper than our circumstances. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.